Ethan never thought his quiet life on the frontier colony would take such an unexpected turn. He had come to the newly settled planet of Lyran, for to escape the noise of crowded Earth cities, to live among wide plains, purple skies, and the hum of alien insects. His homestead was modest, a domed house, a few plots of hardy crops, and a barn for the local grazing beasts. It was a perfect place for someone who wanted solitude. But solitude rarely lasted long in unexplored places. One evening, while returning from the river with a load of water, Ethan heard a sound he couldn't ignore. It was a high, pitiful cry, somewhere between a child's whimper and the mew of a cat. He froze, the hair on his arms rising. Lyran 4's wildlife was unpredictable. Some creatures lured prey by mimicking weakness. He almost walked on, but then the cry came again, weaker. Against his better judgment, he followed. In the brush, tangled in a net of thorny vines, he found her. At first glance, she looked like a young woman, slender, with pale skin that shimmered faintly under Lyran 4's twin moons. But her features were not human. Her ears, tall and tufted, twitched like those of a lynx. Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the dark, slit-pupiled and sharp. A long, furred tail lashed weakly against the thorns. She met his gaze with a mixture of terror and defiance. And then she hissed. Ethan crouched. Easy there. I'm not going to hurt you. The creature hissed again, but didn't struggle. She was clearly exhausted, her legs trembling from holding herself above the thorns. Carefully, Ethan cut her free with his knife. When the last vine fell away, she collapsed into his arms, light as a child. He carried her home. For the first few days, she stayed curled up in a corner of his home, wrapped in a blanket. She barely touched the food he set out, except for raw strips of fish, which he devoured eagerly. She didn't speak, only watch him with wide, unblinking eyes. Ethan wasn't sure what to call her. Eventually, he settled on Naira, after the sound she made when content, a rolling purr that vibrated in her throat. Naira was wary, but slowly she adjusted. She explored the corners of his home, sniffed at his tools, and curled up on the sunny patches of floor to nap. Ethan often woke in the night to find her perched at the foot of his bed, watching him with glowing eyes. At times, she seemed more like a pet than a person. She chased moths, leaped onto high shelves, and rubbed against his legs when hungry. Yet there was intelligence in her gaze, something deeper than instinct. Sometimes she mimicked his words, softly, as though trying to understand. Weeks passed. Ethan found himself talking to her more, filling the silence with stories of Earth, of cities, and rainstorms and music. Naira never answered, but she listened. She would tilt her head, ears flicking, as though memorizing every word. One evening, as he sat repairing a broken tool, Naira crept closer than usual. She touched his arm lightly, claws barely grazing his skin, then curled up beside him. For the first time, she purred not because of food, but simply because he was there. Ethan realized then, she wasn't his pet. She was something more. The shift in their relationship was subtle but undeniable. Naira began sleeping beside him, instead of at the foot of the bed. She imitated his gestures, learning to use simple tools. She brought him gifts from the forest, shiny stones, feathers, once even a live insect he had to chase out of the house. One morning, Ethan woke to find her pressed against him, her tail draped over his waist. She looked at him with those golden eyes, not as a frightened creature anymore, but as a companion. She spoke, haltingly, the first real words he had ever heard from her. If they mind. The declaration startled him more than anything, but the warmth in her gaze, the way she nestled against him, left no room for doubt. She had chosen him, and somehow he realized he had chosen her too. Months later, the colony physician dropped by for a routine supply delivery. Ethan greeted him at the door, only for the man's eyes to widen when Naira padded into view, tail swishing. By the stars! Ethan, do you know what you got here? That's not just some alien stray. That's a Lyrian filari, a sapient species. They're rare, barely documented. Most avoid humans. Ethan glanced at Naira, who was crouched nearby, ears twitching as she watched the newcomer. She pressed close to Ethan, tail curling protectively around his leg. She's not dangerous, Ethan said firmly. She's family. The physician studied Naira, then sighed. Well, she seems bonded to you. Just be careful. Filari bonds are strong. They're not like pets. They choose their mates for life. Ethan's heart thudded. He looked at Naira, who blinked slowly, affectionately, as if confirming the words. Mate, not pet, not companion. Mate. Seasons passed on Lyran 4. The colony grew, but Ethan rarely left his homestead. Life with Naira was simple, filled with small joys. Her chasing insect in the fields, her curling in his lap as he read, her laughter, a strange bell-like sound, when he tried to mimic her feline agility and failed. One night, under the glow of the twin moons, Naira pressed close to him, her body trembling. She whispered in his ear, her words clearer now. Ethan soon. She placed his hand gently over her stomach. It took him a moment to understand. Then his breath caught. Naira was expecting. The weeks that followed were both anxious and wondrous. Naira grew more affectionate, clinging to him, purring constantly. Ethan did everything he could, building a warm nest of blankets, catching extra fish, learning from the physician what little was known of filari pregnancies. When the time came, it was in the quiet of night. Naira curled into the nest, her cries sharp and wild. Ethan stayed by her side, holding her hand, whispering comfort. Hours passed, until at last, tiny voices filled the air, high-pitched mews that made Ethan's chest ache with wonder. Kittens, 3 of them, small, furred, with tiny tails and ears that twitched like their mothers. They nestled against Naira, blind and fragile, but alive. Ethan felt tears burn his eyes. He reached out, and one of the kittens grasped his finger with impossibly small claws. Naira looked up at him, exhausted but radiant. Our family. Life changed once again. The homestead was no longer quiet. It was filled with the cries and purrs of kittens tumbling across the floor. Ethan learned to kitten-proof his home, to laugh when they chewed on his boots or climbed his shelves. Naira was fiercely protective but allowed him to hold them, to rock them to sleep against his chest. Neighbors who visited were stunned. Word spread to the colony. The solitary human who had adopted a strange cat-like alien now had a family of half-human, half-Alari children. Some reacted with awe, others with unease. But Ethan didn't care. His world was no longer empty. On warm evenings, he would sit outside with Naira curled against him, the kittens chasing fireflies in the tall grass. The purple skies stretched above, endless and quiet, but no longer lonely. He had come to Lyran for seeking solitude. Instead, he had found love in the most unexpected form, wild, fierce, and beautiful. And as he watched Naira laugh softly, tail wrapped around her playful young, Ethan knew this was what he'd been searching for all along. Not solitude, not escape. Home.